So if we go into a little bit on the memory side of things and just maybe help people with that, and why positive engagement in kind of visiting and just day to day is still important, because I'm sure you've heard it as well. It's kind of, they don't remember anyway.
Yeah,
they do.
They're not going to know. And it's such a big misconception. So maybe a person with dementia won't remember who came to visit yesterday, but they'll certainly remember someone came and it was really nice and they gave me a cuddle. It's that emotional content that we tend to retain and not the logic around it, obviously.
Absolutely. So, again, we'll describe this as best we can. Obviously, there's some visuals if you're watching this, but so we break it down into, this is taken from the Alzheimer's Society as far as a great theory. And I don't know who originally kind of came up with the way of putting it across. But
I think it was somebody called Gemma.
Somebody called Gemma. Well done, Gemma.
Narrowed it down.
That counts as an acknowledgement. We're not trying to take credit for ourselves, but it's the dual bookcase kind of analogy or metaphor, that if you imagine that we've got two bookcases in our brain, and one of these bookcases is our hippocampus, and it's our logical memory, and it's our rationale and facts and reasons, and it's where we retain kind of all of the short-term memories or the day-to-days. And we've also got then another bookcase, which is our emotional memories and our feelings. And these two different bookcases in our brain are affected differently by the condition of dementia. So if you imagine that every shelf on our bookshelf for the hippocampus is, so what I did 5 minutes ago is on the top shelf, what I did 2 days ago is still on the top shelf, but the further down the bookcase I move, the older the memories become. So my childhood memories are down at that bottom shelf, and my short-term memories, the things that have happened most recently, are up on that top shelf. Now, unfortunately, and this, I don't know whether you describe it in the same way, but the analogy I use is that bookcase, unfortunately, the hippocampus bookcase is IKEA built, or it's Argos built. It's a bit of a flat pack and you're not very good at building it. Okay, it's one of the ones I've built. And unfortunately, the nature of dementia causes that bookcase to be shaken. Okay, so whereas the amygdala is kind of more made of oak. So the amygdala bookcase kind of maintains much more effectively, and generally as we get older anyway.
So in the middle stages, what tends to happen is the dementia shaking both of those bookcases a lot harder, okay? And we're losing a lot more from those recent memories, that recent information, the logic, fact and reason. So really good story to tell alongside this is there's a lady, for example, that may wake up at 90 years old in a care home. Her bookcase may have been shaken at particular times, and she's looking through that bookcase. So at the top shelf would be the logic, fact and reason that she's 90 years old and that she's in a care home, but that information's now missing. So the brain will just orientate itself using the information it has available, and the information available is usually the emotional memory. Now, going down her bookcase, it's morning time. I usually take my children to school during this time. Where are my kids? I need to get my children to school. And this is one of the most upsetting things I think about this. We're going down that bookcase and we're going into those earlier memories because they're the ones that have sustained and they're holding on really, really tight. And at this time of day, this is when I take my children to school. And I always say to people, can you imagine waking up not knowing where your children are or where you are or what time era that you're in? I can see why people do have distressing behaviours. In the middle stages of dementia, we do see this happening quite a lot. It's also referred to in seasons of dementia. So this will be coming into sort of your autumn stages. For anybody that's ever read about the seasons in dementia. But again, this is where we need to work really hard there with memory orientation. And that brings us nicely onto something else. So therapeutic untruths and love lies.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So let's say I had a family member who misnamed me. There's no point in trying to redirect. All it is that they've lost that book on the bookshelf. They're seeing me as somebody else in that moment. They've looked for a book down the bookcase and they've found somebody who looks familiar, and therefore I become that person. Or they've just tried to work their way around and found a different name available, and that's all they're using. And therefore, we just go along with that name. There's no point in correcting, because all we're going to do is upset them that they messed up, which means we're affecting the amygdala bookcase, causing them upset and distress and reminding them how they got it wrong again, rather than just allowing them to be in that moment. And suddenly you end up having an argument with them about getting it wrong rather than just enjoying spending time with them. So if we've got somebody who's wanting their mum, well, telling the truth and reminding them that their mum's passed away and that they're 90 and think how old that make their mum is and stuff like that. Well, in the early stages, we might find the person go, oh, yes, how silly of me. As we get into towards mid stages, we're just starting to get significant upset around that. They're not remembering. They're not just going to be able to recollect. Suddenly, we just become a liar. No, why are you telling me that my mum's not here when I believe she is? And all these feelings are telling me that she should be here. So should I just ignore and not believe my feelings? So why are we saying that mum is dead? I can see your distress, so I'm going to remind you that your mum's dead to make you feel better. That just doesn't make any sense. But also, potentially, we shouldn't just be going, she's round the corner, she'll be 10 minutes, because they may remember. They may then get more anxious about the fact that she's not there right now. One of the things I get people to think about is put it into a context that, well, why would somebody want their mum? And somebody wants their mum because they're missing something. They're still communicating something. Their context is wrong, but their behavior is right. So if I felt lonely or if I felt ill, I would probably ask where my mum was well if I'd regressed to that age or that orientation. So the therapeutic untruth is going, well, I don't know where your mum is, because that's a genuine truth, isn't it? I don't know what happens after we die, so therefore I'm not lying. But then focus on need. Why don't we go through here and we can sit and wait together? Because we can still meet that person's needs and feelings without having to correct them. Yeah, I know you've got some really good examples on that as well.
So I personally feel like this is where you can get the positive engagement from them. So so for me, coming from a care background, it would be a case of, well, mum's not here at the moment, but why don't we sit and talk about mum? What was her name? And engaging in those positive memories. Obviously, there is a reason. It's that emotional. I want my mum. I might be feeling a bit insecure, a little bit unsafe. Why not engage and talk about mum for a bit? One of the biggest things that we hear as well, when people are emotional with dementia, we hear, don't cry. It's all right. They're allowed to cry. Let them have, someone's missing their mum. I think that's a really good positive thing to encourage in holding their hand through that. You read diversion and distraction kind of things. They can come in all different forms, but it's always got to be meaningful to the person and not to somebody else. So, it's all right. You just go watch EastEnders for 5 minutes and we'll sort it out. What if I don't like EastEnders? That's not going to work. But engaging people into obviously trying to help them find the truth themselves, or it's not necessarily lying to them, but sometimes it's just listening. So, why do you want mum? What's going on? That's okay. I want my mum sometimes too. And it's empathizing and sympathizing with the person that I think could be really useful.
I think that's a big thing, isn't it? Even if we're using redirection or anything like that, we've got to go into where this person is in this moment.
Yeah.
One of my favorite kind of sayings that I repeat, and again, I've nicked them all from elsewhere, nothing's my own, is connection before correction. Now, I'm not saying you should be correcting the person when we're working with dementia, but we've got to connect with them first.
Yeah.
Why would, as you gave the example there of all go in the other room and watch EastEnders, well, you haven't listened to me. I'm upset about something. So the fact that you've not acknowledged I'm upset, you're not trying to understand them upset, you've not tried to connect with me and listen to me about that, why would I then, you're just dismissing me rather than understanding me. And I think that's where people need to go to, is just acknowledging the person's feelings, which is the truth, listening to them, and then putting it into context. Well, how would I help a person who is in this emotional state? Whether the truth of what has or hasn't happened is irrelevant.
Yeah,
definitely. How can I engage with the person emotionally rather than logically? Because that's the environment they're in. One of the things, if we turn it over to the positive and using this, if the bookshelves on the bottom of the hippocampus are still the ones that are retained last, they're the ones that, and this could be a really positive thing if we turn it around a different view. And I heard a lovely kind of way of putting it across from somebody where they sort of said, like, most of us when we go and visit our parents, for instance, it tends to be very chit-chatty. It tends to be, so what you've been up to, what you've been doing, and we tend to just focus on the frivolous and the kind of the here and now. When you don't have those available, if your parent then can't tell you what they had for tea last night because it's not available to them, and actually asking them causes them more distress in the fact that they can't remember, then we can go back to the memories that they can remember, which could be their childhood or the job they used to do. And they might be able to talk for hours about those particular things. And they're topics and subjects that we don't always take the time to get to know with our loved ones.
You've always said it, Andy. What's the one thing that people love talking about most?
Ourselves.
Yeah, of course.
That's because I love talking about myself more than anything. But I think it is a generalisation across the board. I hope it is just not my neuroticism.
I think most people, I'm not going to speak for everyone, but most people like talking about their childhoods or their teenage years, what they got up to, their first loves and all those sorts of really nice, fun things. And this is where we're at in this sort of stage of dementia, aren't we? In those later stages.
Yeah.
I may be able to tell you all the emotions from there and all the cheeky things that somebody used to get up to. And
it can be difficult,
really
obviously, if
nice.
somebody doesn't have those positives in their life sometimes.
It can be really difficult, yeah.
Yeah. And that's the thing is, we're talking about everybody's favourite subject themselves, but it is ourselves, but it's what we like talking about. So
of course it is.
I may not like talking about my family, but I may love talking about my friends as an example sort of thing. So that may be something so it's finding, again, their favourite subject and something that they engage with, isn't it? Yeah, definitely. I think one of the other things with that, a lovely story I heard was from a lady who said that she was looking after a mum, and a mum, when she went in, just seemed to be kind of not distressed, but kind of a nervous excitement. And her mum had reorientated herself to, it was her wedding day, and she was panicking about making sure her dress and her hair was done right and her makeup was right. And she was talking in this kind of excited anticipation that everybody does kind of on their wedding day. And basically the daughter kind of just referred to going, it was kind of beautiful in the fact that I never was there at my mum's wedding day, but to see what my mum was like on her wedding day and the feelings she was having and the experiences and things that she was worrying about was kind of beautiful. And I think that's a lovely thing to kind of, I found that quite a moving story of being able to,
it's lovely.
To kind of, something that, again, most of us don't get that window into our loved ones' past and soul and stuff like that in the way that maybe we do with something on dementia.